to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so very much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. And if that's something you want to listen to on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple and Spotify. When you get there, rate, review, but most importantly, subscribe. Because if you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. And speaking of Mondays, it is one right now at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And we are live on YouTube on the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel. Make sure that you go over there and you subscribe there also. Because if you do, you won't miss our shows when we go live. And you can be a part of the show. You can tune in. You can comment. We love reading comments. We love interacting with everybody. So come hang out, have a good time, and literally be a part of this show. At Charlie_Burris, at ZachTNT, at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com for everything that Zach writes on the internet. Oh boy. Been a couple of weeks since we had a normal show. Last week, Zach and I, schedules just didn't match up, so we just had some YouTube clips that we put up of just talking shorter clips of us just talking about stuff that happened that week. It was a big week. Got to talk about Lance Hurd committing, among other things. Got to talk about Alabama fans acting as if they are somehow owed the college football world to change around them so that they can just not lose players off of their roster. Go back and listen to that on the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel. But this week, it's been a slow week, but as always with Tennessee sports, there's always something to talk about, and we're going to talk about it all. What's up, Zach?
I don't think I noticed until tonight, or maybe I noticed, I just hadn't really paid attention, the long pause between when you say podcast and introduce us, your name and my name. It reminds me of Pat Summerall back with John Madden in the day with when you do the Murder, She Wrote promos. I always remember they said he would wait as long as possible for the comma between murder and she wrote. That was kind of the vibe I was getting there. Not, I mean, maybe I'm comparing you to Pat Summerall, all time legend there, but yes.
I don't mind that comparison at all. I will certainly say that. It really is just to match up with the music, because the music has a little pause there that at the beginning, and it goes. Well, maybe I went back a little bit too far. Right there, it has that little pause. Yeah. That's what I paused for. That's really it. That's the honest to God truth. I wish it was as cool as being artistic in the form of Pat Summerall, but
it works. It works.
It's just a timing thing. So it's been an interesting week. Not much news has come out about Tennessee football or anything, but we have had Dalton Knecht absolutely going off. And now suddenly you've seen these tweets of people saying, oh, is Dalton Knecht in the National Player of the Year conversation? Can he, challenge Zach, yada, yada. We're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about On3 had a reshuffling of their player ratings. And one of Tennessee's commits flew up the board and is now super highly rated. And we're going to talk about that too. And then we'll finish off the show with a little discussion about what's happening with Zane Denton in the baseball team. A guy who had a really good year last year for the baseball team was set to come back, and then there's something going on there where it's not so easy as just, Zane Denton's coming back for the baseball team. Maybe not. We're going to talk about what's happening there, and that's going to be the show tonight. Might be a short one, but every time I say that, we end up going for like an hour and a half. So I don't know. We'll see. But we'll get to it right after I tell you about our first great sponsor, Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans have been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200-plus locations across the state. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Go get yourself a health plan with Farm Bureau. Support them because they support us. All right. Tennessee and the volunteer basketball team, Rick Barnes and the boys, went down to Nashville, and it's always weird. It's in Nashville. There was some stat that Tennessee, I don't know if it was all time, I think, but I believe it was all time, as a top 10 team is 1-5 in Nashville. So not great. There's just always a weird voodoo there. That building is weird. Vandy is a school full of weird nerds, and it lived up to that reputation. Tennessee was down 5 at the half, and it was just ugly. They were just playing sloppy basketball. Looked like they didn't have their head screwed on straight. And halftime, and whatever happened at halftime, Dalton Knecht found new life, and this kid just continues to show out in a way that, I mean, I put it in the YouTube title here, that Dalton Knecht is the best player that Tennessee's had since, I mean, in terms of being a pure scorer, I think everybody's going to say Chris Lofton, but I don't want to just flat out say he's better than Chris Lofton, but in a general sense, he is a more gifted all-around scorer. And he's setting all of these records that are like the best Tennessee scorer since Allen Houston. I mean, just legendary stuff, what this kid is doing. And he's doing it relative to the SEC also. I believe it was the most 30-point games in a season since 2010 or something like that for an SEC player. Wild numbers. And he goes in, drops 32 in Nashville, lights it up in that second half. Tennessee wins by like 13. They kind of ran away with it there at the end. This kid's doing wild stuff, man. I just quickly, before we get into this whole national player conversation, I don't know what you thought about Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it was, even in the first half when it was kind of ugly, you still had that feeling, and we were all kind of texting about it, like, you know, they're going to pull away in this game. Like, this isn't going to be a repeat of last year. And part of that's because you know, last season when they lost to Vanderbilt, I think it was Vesterby that kind of struggled there, you know, in that latter part of that game near the end, missing some free throws. And I think we said it then a year ago that this team was just missing that go-to guy. And like Dalton Knecht, just this miracle from, you know, northern Colorado that none of us had ever heard about before he transferred in. And you know, he transfers in, and you look at the numbers. You're like, yeah, this could work. You know, this guy could be a really sneaky, good, under the radar pickup, and it's proved to be one of the best portal finds we've seen ever in college basketball, especially in this era. And he's been that go-to guy that, you know, didn't even make that game close at the end. Just kind of took over, put it away. Type of guy you have to have in the NCAA tournament, which we've obviously talked about. I'm excited for March, really, really excited. In years past, it feels like we've talked about, you know, if this team gets hot, if this happens, if that happens, and not to predict anything because we don't know how it'll play out. All it takes is one off night, but I can't wait to watch this guy on that stage because it's clear that he loves the big moment. When it's time for him to take over, you know, no moment has been too big for him so far. I know you lost, you know, the game in Chapel Hill against UNC, but he scored 37 that night. I mean, he did everything possible to win that game, you know, for Tennessee. And really, that game was out of hand at halftime, and ended up being fairly close at the end. I think they lost by 8. So just knowing that about him already, I think we're going to see some special and fun things in the SEC tournament and into March Madness when the NCAA tournament gets underway. And we'll see how far that takes Tennessee. But I think he's going to be a guy that all the shows are talking about, that's getting all the hype, that, you know, I think you mentioned it in one of our group texts the other day about like a Stephen Curry type run at Davidson. I don't know if that's what's going to be in store for us, but it feels like it has that kind of potential. And for that to be a Tennessee guy, I mean, it's fun to watch when that happens, no matter who it is. But for it to possibly be a Tennessee guy, it's really exciting.
I feel I've said this a lot to anyone that has listened to this show at length, but I'm at the end of the day. I mean, I love football and Tennessee football and college football, but I'm a basketball guy at the end of the day. I was just brought up that way. My dad is just a huge basketball guy too. He grew up in Kentucky. He's not a Kentucky fan, don't worry. But you know, grew up in Kentucky. And it's just, he's basketball obsessed. He made me basketball obsessed. And the thing that I've waited on my entire life as a Tennessee fan, having lived here my whole life and, been a Vol fan for all this time, is basketball greatness. You got really close with Bruce, and then Barnes now with Grant Williams. You saw just that team. I think if you beat Loyola Chicago, it's probably a Final Four team. And then you had your chance last year where you make the Sweet 16, you lose that FAU, and just like there's been all those times where you're just like right there, and there's just something that's holding you back. And RTB says in the comments here, Dalton Knecht is what we've been missing. He is exactly what you're saying. At least it seems this way to this point in the season. He's what you're saying, Zach. He's that, as Dick Vitale would say, a PTPer. He is a primetime player. When those lights come on, he is that dude. He embraces that. His teammates embrace him being that dude. It's actually, I think, really perfect, the setup with this team, because there was so much, and we said it so much on this show last year. You could just tell when crunch time came with that team a year ago, it was hot potato. They were just like, no, you shoot it. No, you shoot it. I don't want the ball. You shoot it. I don't know. And Dalton Knecht goes in there and goes, give me the ball, boys. I'm going to the hoop. And he just takes over a basketball game. And it's wild to watch, because it's that missing piece that for somebody like me that has just, greatness in basketball, Tennessee has escaped us for so long. It makes my heart skip a beat, not to get too romantic about it. But I just look at the way that this sets up. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head. He is that guy that when you're in the Sweet 16 and you need a bucket, you're down one with 40 seconds left, you just go get this man the basketball, and he's going to make something happen. And it makes me so excited to watch, because the dude is just a cheat code. That's the easiest way to say it. It really is wild. Casey in the comments, he says he's the best player Tennessee's had since Dale Ellis. I was a little young when Dale Ellis was at Tennessee. And by young, I mean not alive. Apologies there. I'm only 32, but I've seen a lot of people say that. I think that's true. RTB says that he's Kevin Durant. Scott just says Allen Houston. And yeah, I mean, Michael says it too. He's the get you a bucket guy. And that's the puzzle piece that was missing. Now, this team is still not perfect. When they face a dominant big man, it's a huge problem. But I think they faced dominant big men before Knecht had truly set in. He dropped 37 in North Carolina, but it was still, you're gelling. You're trying to find your way. The guys are trying to figure out their roles. Like Vescovy has really had to settle into being a secondary guy. And I think kind of what I was saying a second ago, I think he likes it. It seems like he got asked about it in some interviews this week, and he was just like, I'm here just to win. I'm going to do what I got to do.
He was kind of thrust into that role earlier than anybody wanted him to be, or not wanted him to be necessarily, but earlier than he should have been when he came to Tennessee. It felt like he kind of was like, okay, we need you to be a guy pretty early on. And I think, like you said, that it just never really allowed him to settle in to a role. And he's kind of bouncing around playing, off the ball, on the ball, kind of whatever they needed. I think that probably factored into that, but it does seem like he's really kind of settled into a role now, and it's because of Knecht being able to come in and kind of be that guy, and you can kind of build your team around that.
For sure. I think there's a lot here that suggests that this is the magic that's been missing in the Barnes era. It's like he's had these pieces, got really close, I think, with Grant and Admiral. They had a lot there. But even at the end of the day there, they still didn't have that dominant big man. Jordan Bone was a really great point guard, but you didn't have a great complement to Bone at that shooting guard position. Admiral was kind of like forward who could make a three, but also back down guys. Like he wasn't a pure shooting guard. And now that pure dominant takeover guy who's not just he's not just Chris Lofton where he can put up a three. He is going to the hoop, and he's going to figure out a way to get that ball in the basket. It's just a different thing. Now, with that said, I mean, we're all just excited about that. It's awesome. But the question that's come up now is if he continues to play at this level, can he be a national player of the year type of guy? And, awards are awards. At the end of the day, they don't really mean that much, but it's really fun to have a conversation that is, does Tennessee basketball have the best player in America right now? And it's a very legitimate conversation. To me, I watch a lot of college basketball. I'm just a junkie. I'll watch Big East games. I'll watch Big Ten games. I'll watch whatever comes on TV. I've watched a lot of Zach Edey. I've watched a lot of Kansas. I've watched a good chunk of UConn, different teams like this. And to me, he's the most dominant guy in America right now. Is he the absolute best player in America? Probably. I mean, it's hard to say. I haven't watched absolutely everybody. But at this moment, the way that he's played in this last month since he came back from that injury, and like that doesn't get talked about ever when you hear like national pundits talking about this. They dismiss him immediately because he just, he's not even the stat leader in the SEC. Well, he was injured for a month. So, let's at least take that into consideration. Right now in SEC play, I believe I saw this today, he's averaging 28 points a game in SEC play. Wild. And on top of that, when you watch him play, that's the thing that really sets it apart to me. When you watch him play, like Zach Edey puts up gaudy numbers at Purdue. They just feed him the ball. His head hits the rim when he's just standing there, and he just turns around and he lays the ball up. He pushes guys around. He really takes advantage of the referees, where he basically just gets the ball, forces something up, draws a foul. It's not beautiful. It's not dominant. It's just he's massive. Dalton Knecht just goes out there and floats. He glides around. It's really like beautiful basketball. A lot of time, like the perfect example is he can just go in, back guy down a little bit, turn around, shoot a fadeaway shot, and it's a shot that for most guys you go like, oh, what are you doing? Why are you forcing it? Why are you forcing that up? And it goes in like most of the time. That shot goes in. And to me, that just really sets him apart. He's not getting his due at the national level. You get national guys like the absolute unabashed clown that is Jeff Goodman, who's really getting his today. I really enjoyed that. If you don't know that whole situation, just go look it up on Twitter. He got dunked on by Dave Portnoy at Barstool Sports today. But guys like him that are just like, oh, it's Zachy. It's just Zachy. He scores 30 points a game. Oh, what? Well, Dalton Knecht scores 30 points a game, except he does it in a way more dominant fashion. He is much more of a takeover player. Maybe that's just me. There's no doubt I'm seeing this with orange-colored glasses, but I don't know what you think, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, for sure he's probably got the SEC Player of the Year sewn up, and the National Player of the Year. He's in. I mean, I think he's in the conversation absolutely, and it's a kind of an incomplete conversation because you got to see this thing through and see where it goes. But it is unfortunate that his numbers aren't really accurate because of that injury that he dealt with and played through and gutted it out at the risk of making it worse. I mean, that just kind of shows you what kind of gamer he is. Not that there's any question about that. You watch him play. But really, if the national guys are paying attention, you look at that and you're like, this is even more of a reason why this guy's the best player in the country. He had an injury, an ankle sprain that probably keeps a lot of guys out sidelined for a while. And he fought through it. I don't think Tennessee didn't really play anybody super tough during that stretch, so they didn't have to, like maybe the NC State game, I guess. They didn't really have to push it with him, and he still played some decent minutes in some of those games. But since coming back to full strength in these huge road games, the numbers he's putting up, I think you can't just look at box scores and his stats on the season and make this determination. You have to watch these guys play. And if you watch him play, like I said, that Vanderbilt game, maybe that's probably a different outcome. I'm not saying Tennessee loses that game without Dalton Knecht, but that game probably goes down to the wire and we're on the edge of our seats and maybe they do lose. I don't know. But yeah, I think he's definitely in that conversation and some big games coming up where he will be able to kind of solidify that resume. You got to have a huge game in Rupp against Kentucky on a Saturday night, a nationally televised game, and that's kind of hard to ignore for some of these guys, especially in that marquee of a matchup.
Well, what I've seen, I think, is just that nobody's actually watching him play except Tennessee fans and the opposing fans that have to get dunked on by him. Because you've seen a lot of Kentucky fans. Oh, Antonio Reeves' stats are better, which is true. On the season, Antonio Reeves' stats are like just barely slightly better. It's like 19.7 points per game to 19.5 or something like that. But when you watch these two dudes in SEC play, when you can chop it down to just that, like I said, it's been this last month where Dalton has truly emerged. When you chop that down and you just compare the two, if you watch the tape, no, they're not in the same conversation. They're just simply not. And it's, if he continues to play this way through the rest of SEC play, there's zero doubt he will win SEC Player of the Year. That's not even a question in my mind. Alabama fans have said Mark Sears, who they've now played against each other, and Dalton had a huge game. Mark Sears did not. There's those other kind of contenders, but when you really watch, I think it really is just that. Like, people just haven't watched, and I think you're 100% right. In Rupp, go in, drop 35, win in Rupp Arena, and people will be talking about him without a doubt. Now, that game is coming up on Saturday, and that we've already discussed. It just gives me a pit in my stomach thinking about that game. I always go in expecting to lose. It is rough. I mean, it's been a house of horrors for Tennessee over the years. House of horrors for everybody. It's a tough place to win. But I am also so excited because it could be the true coming out game for Knecht, because we are all talking about it, but it hasn't reached that national fever pitch yet. And this is where it could, because on Saturday it is prime time. I mean, it's 8:30. You are right there in the spotlight. I'm sure it's on ESPN or whatever. And it's just what everybody's going to be watching if you watch college basketball. And so it's just, man, it's just really exciting. So you got to beat South Carolina. Also, let's say that too. A lot of people are thinking that's a trap game. Maybe I am wrong here. South Carolina is really, outside of beating Kentucky on their home floor in kind of a trap game-ish sort of spot, they really haven't done much. And so I'm, color me skeptical. I would put it that way. I think if Tennessee plays good defense, I think Tennessee probably wins by 10 plus. But again, I don't want to be that casual about it. It's an SEC basketball game. You got to be on your game. But in Thompson Bowling Arena, I think it's a win. And then you go to Rupp, and it just, this isn't the whole season, but in some sense, when you're me, and that Kentucky game just means so much. Me and a ton of other Tennessee fans, it just means so much how bitter it is. Like, that's the one. Like, winning in Rupp is the most satisfying. Just sticking it to smug Kentucky fans, because basketball is everything to them. It's just so good. I want it so bad. I want it so bad.
It's a statement game. I mean, if you can go out there and beat them and show that you can beat a big guy that's kind of been your Achilles heel so far this season, it creates a narrative through the second half of the season, the stretch run of this conference season, that Tennessee's legit national title contender, right up there with everybody. I think I said this when we were kind of texting throughout the game. I'd like to see Estrella get more minutes in this game. I think that's necessary at this point.
I mean, Caleb says here, why does it feel like Tobe Awaka has taken a step back? I think I don't know if it's a full-blown step back, but I don't feel like he's gotten significantly better. He's gone out there a few times and just been a straight-up liability. And right now I'm completely in agreement with you. I put in Estrella, and because
a lot of the little things that that doesn't show up, I feel like he can do and help you win a game like that.
Yes, it would just be really big to not have anybody weighing you down at any point. Awaka can come in and give you good minutes, especially rebounding the basketball. He can be a powerful rebounder, and he takes up a lot of space. But I think Estrella, the more he plays, the more crisp he's gotten. He makes less mistakes, and he just looks more confident out there. And I think he is going to be, in the longer run, he's going to be really good. I mean, Vol Bros right here, who've had me on their show. They're awesome. Shout out to them. Watch their show, everybody. They said Tobe can't stay out of foul trouble. Also, I mean, he is a walking foul. He goes in there, and it's 2 fouls automatically. And And so, man, it's tough. But this is an interesting point from Casey. He said, "I agree, but that could be because Adu has been balling." I think was he referring to the stats not being as high? I don't know exactly when he sent in that comment, but for Dalton Knecht, if his stats weren't as high, because you've had guys like Adu also dropping in 20 points a game. I mean, he has had in out of the last 5, probably 3 of those have been big games for Adu. I'd have to go back and check the stats, but that's another thing. I mean, actually, Knecht's stats aren't as high as they could be, crazily, and he's scoring 35.
What's kind of wild about Knecht is if he needs the stats for Player of the Year, you kind of need these games to be close because that's when he's putting up the big numbers. I mean, like the Alabama game, he had 25. They won by 20. He played a lot of minutes, but he could have had, if he needed to score 35 to 40 points in that game, he would have, but he didn't have to. So,
I mean, the thing that really with the Kentucky. So if you've watched Kentucky this season, their defense is what defense? They don't play defense. They're all backcourt. They're all offense. They have a couple of 7-footers. But I mean, it's still, I mean, their backcourt, Antonio Reeves, he carries them, and they don't play defense. There's a chance that the final score of that game is like 94-93, and Dalton Knecht literally scores 40. I think it's win or lose, you decide. But I think that's a very real possibility because I don't think they're going to put up just a massive amount of resistance there. And that's really exciting too. Please, I want it bad. But anything else with basketball before we move on to a little bit of recruiting talk, a little bit of football, Zach?
One quick question. Dalton Knecht, he's going to be a 1-year Tennessee guy. If he does win National Player of the Year, I mean, at UNC, a lot of these schools, that's what gets your jersey retired at those programs. 1 year, only 1 year wins the National Player of the Year. What's your take there? Because I mean, that's a pretty rare. I mean, that's a huge award.
I think some of the criteria, I've gone through this before because when I used to do radio, we had on Chris Lofton, and I went through what it was to get your jersey retired. You do have to, I believe you at some point have to be a unanimous All-American, and I think he will be that. Knecht will be. Again, this is all contingent on him continuing this level of play, but with, barring injury, there's really no reason to think it will stop. Unanimous All-American, I think it does involve winning one big award. I don't know if that's SEC Player of the Year or National Player of the Year or something like that. I think that is one of them. And I don't know if you have to do multiple years. But, I mean, if you win SEC Player of the Year, National Player of the Year, unanimous All-American, like, I don't know how you...
I think there's a conversation there. I mean, I know it's...
Absolutely.
And it's going to be a thing, right? In college basketball, it already is kind of like that. If you're great, a lot of times you're not there for 4 years like you used to, or even 3 years. I mean, every now and then, of course, there are situations, but now with the portal as well, when you bring in guys in, just kind of this revolving door, that conversation now is not the same as it was in 2004 or 1994 or in years past. So he wins the National Player of the Year and racks up all those honors. I think there's a legitimate case there.
I would agree. That'll be an interesting kind of off season, especially
if it happens.
Well, if you win those awards, even if you don't win all those awards, but let's say he wins SEC Player of the Year, and then you make a Final Four or something.
Now, that's another one. If you were to rack, I mean, this is projecting a lot, to rack up National Player of the Year and then Most Outstanding Player in the Final Four, because that's like another huge one. Most Outstanding Player in the Final Four is one that kind of is in that criteria for a lot of programs. Then you've really got a pretty strong case. I hope we're talking about it.
I know. I can't even describe. I mean, I haven't cried that much at Tennessee sports. One of them was like the Alabama game. When the Rangers won the World Series this past year, I shed a tear. One of them was losing to Michigan State in the Elite Eight. With Bruce Pearl, like it, having it be that close to the thing that I have just always wanted. I mean, and now that's compounded by an additional, how long ago was that? 15 years, whatever it's been. I cannot tell you how meaningful it would be to me for if this team could make a Final Four. And that, that's been true in perpetuity since like Barnes has been here fielding good basketball teams. I don't know. It just, man, I want it so bad. I just, man. Well, anyway, all right. So hopefully it continues. We'll talk about it next week because by this time next week we'll have seen the South Carolina game, the Kentucky game. Tons of potential there for huge games for Knecht and for everybody on the basketball team. I think I honestly also at the end of the day, Knecht could score 0 points, and if Tennessee wins in Rupp, I'm ecstatic. It's neither here nor there. Frankly, at the end of the day, that's what I really care about there. But it would be really nice if they do that and Knecht scores a ton of points. That would be sweet. But all right, let's talk just a little bit about football. Not much has happened with football, but there was a reshuffling of On3's recruiting rankings, and one of Tennessee's commits for this past class is now in a really impressive position, and we'll talk about it right after I tell you about BetterHelp. If I can get the banner up right there. If you are a sports fan like myself and Zach, you know how many years the Big Orange have shaved off your life with the emotional roller coaster of college sports, or maybe the roller coaster of life is messing with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals. Regardless, if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human going through a hard time, therapy can give you tools to approach your life in a different way. And that's where BetterHelp comes into play. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and accessible. And this is an important mission because finding a therapist can be hard, especially when you're limited to just the options in your area. BetterHelp's platform makes finding a therapist easier because it's online and remote. BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. Plus, with our link, betterhelp.com/ATOZ sports, you get 10% off your first month. See a therapist because maintaining your mental health is just as important as maintaining your physical health. And this football season, which is almost completely coming to an end, go to betterhelp.com/ATOZ sports and save 10% on your first month. That is BetterHelp. Thanks a lot to them. They've been with us for a while now. Great sponsor. All righty. So just quickly, going to talk a little bit about this recruiting. Then we're going to talk some about the Super Bowl because there's a couple of Vols in the Super Bowl, and it was interesting how all of that shook out. But first off, On3 moved around the rankings just a little bit. And this is always controversial because you get takes like, I want to say, which player was it in Tennessee's current class that got moved down to a 4-star? And some of the recent reshuffling, I think with 247 Sports, somebody got moved down. Might have been George McIntyre.
I think Mike Matthews did on
Mike Matthews, maybe.
Yeah, which is bizarre because with Matthews, it happened after the Under Armour,
the Polynesian Bowl,
or the Polynesian Bowl. There's so many of them; it's hard to keep track. And 24/7 Sports, like every day, was like, "This dude's balling out. He looks legit. Can't really say anything else about him. He's a playmaker. He's athletic. One of the best players in the country." And then they drop him in their rankings. Like,
and you get the take that you get from that is just 247 hates Tennessee. They don't want Tennessee to have a high rate of recruiting.
My theory on this has always been there is a little conspiracy to this, but it's not like a they hate Tennessee thing. It's they want to be right. Like they hate when they go back and there's a 5-star guy and they don't pan out. They hate when it's a 3-star guy and they ends up being a superstar. And it's like, well, they barely they rated him, is overlooked all this. And I think they're the odds, and this is true. Like I can admit this as a Tennessee fan. In the past 10 or 15 years, the odds of a player going to Alabama and developing are higher than the odds of a player going to Tennessee and developing. I mean, there's more NFL players in the draft from Alabama. There has been. Hopefully that's changing here. It's already kind of on its way where we're seeing some Byron Youngs and guys making an impact as young player, and Darnell Wright. But I think that has a lot to do with it. Is it's been so up and down, revolving door of coaches at Tennessee that they just trust that they'll get developed more at an Alabama or an Ohio State. That's my
That
theory,
is,
at least.
I like that. That's a really interesting point, and maybe that really is. Although they are perpetually wrong. It is a little bit of the business that you're in, because you're just purely predicting what these guys will be like.
Yeah, I mean,
But you,
NFL teams miss all the time on these dudes.
yeah,
Especially
I mean, you
quarterbacks.
saw you saw today a tweet that went viral with Tennessee fans was that Jawan Jennings is technically the from high school rankings. High school rankings, Jawan Jennings is the highest rated QB in the Super Bowl. Because if you remember back, he was a QB coming into Tennessee, and he was a pretty highly rated 4-star dual threat QB, and like Mahomes, very under the radar. Brock Purdy was, Brock Purdy, it's been talked about plenty that he was the last pick in the draft his year, and all that crap. And so, I mean, they're wrong constantly. It just is what it is. But with this, they reshuffle these rankings, and yeah, sometimes Tennessee players get dropped. Other times, what happened today happens. And Jordan Ross, this is VolQuest. They said Jordan Ross had been sitting on the cusp of 5-star status for some time, and following a dominant showing at the Under Armour game in Polynesian Bowl, the Alabama pass rusher is now the number 7 overall prospect and top-rated edge rusher in the class. Bona fide 5-star. They move him on up. That's from Matt Ray, friend of the show. He's been on the show with us. And he's now a full-blown 5-star. And this is so crazy because when you look at Josh Heupel, I mean, my thought was when he came here originally, I was like, okay, we're probably going to get some quarterbacks, probably going to get some wide receivers, maybe some running backs, just with the flashiness of this offense. But really, some of the flashiest recruits he has gotten are these defensive linemen. I mean, I guess edge rushers, linebacker, whatever that position is at this point. But that's really, defensive guys have been some of his most impressive recruits. And I don't think that I ever thought that was really going to be the case. But obviously it's a testament to Rodney Garner, who has just been such a powerful recruiter for Tennessee and a developer also. Don't forget that too. And now that's 2 5-stars under Josh Heupel at that edge position when you count James Pierce. And it's awesome. And hopefully Ross comes in and he's a dog, just like James Pierce.
I mean, he could make a big impact as a true freshman because, if he gets on the field, which it sounds like he's talented enough to do, James Pierce is going to be in a lot of double teams.
Oh, yeah.
I think people need to be prepared for this guy. I mean, he's going to be a top 5 pick based off what he did this season, or top first round pick. I don't know if he'll be top 5. It depends on how everything plays out and who has what pick, but his numbers might not be insane. He might not have the 14 or 15 sacks because he's going to get a lot of attention. I mean, just based off of what he did this past season. We already saw it a little bit. I mean, we saw some in the Citrus Bowl, and he still managed to make a huge impact. So the numbers might be there, but don't get worried if they're not quite as gaudy as we think. But it's going to open up so many opportunities for Joshua Josephs, Caleb Herring, and then Jordan Ross. You throw him into that. That's another potentially dominant first-round draft pick type of guy. I mean, when you go back and you look at the Will Andersons and a lot of these edge rushers that are drafted in the first round, this is the one area where recruiting rankings usually get it pretty close because it's you kind of got to have a certain build. You got to have speed. You got to have the frame. Those are a little easier to project because you're not going to have undersized guys coming in and making a huge impact a lot of times at that position. Most of those guys are like 5-star guys ranked in the top 15 of their recruiting class. They are what Jordan Ross is. I mean, he projects to being that type of player. You lose Pierce, and that's terrible, because we know we get one more year of him. You slide Ross right in there. And when you combine that with what Byron Young has done as a rookie in the NFL, I mean, I think 8.5 sacks as a rookie on that defensive line with the Rams, which is really, really, really solid for any edge rusher. I think he had more sacks than Will Anderson, who was a top 3 pick. And Byron Young was a 3rd-round pick. I mean, we talked about the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, like you kind of mentioned. It's like, hey, there's going to be several drafts in a row here where Tennessee's putting elite edge rushers into the NFL. Recruits are going to notice that. And you've already got the best one out of the state of Alabama. You know, you've proven that you can go out and win those battles. It should only get easier from here.
I mean, realistically, this is giving me the opportunity to make a thumbnail like, is Heupel building a defensive juggernaut? Yeah, that's probably what I'm going to do as a thumbnail, something like that. On this, if I post that as a clip this week. But I don't know if it's a defensive juggernaut, but at least on the defensive line, I mean, they have done such an impressive job between recruits and transfers, and then obviously the coach being one of the best defensive line coaches in America. Like that is such a solid position on this football team, and it's just so nice because when you look across with this offense and just the way that it operates, obviously, no matter what happens, that offense is extremely fast. When it goes wrong, it's extremely fast. When it goes really good, it's also extremely fast. It's huge shots over the top. It's big explosive plays, and so you score quickly. And then this defense is on the field a ton. And so just having even just a marginally better defense year over year, and more talent like that and stacking talent is so powerful on a team like this. And I don't think you can undersell that. And it really is massive and has been such a pleasant surprise with Heupel so far. I absolutely love it. But otherwise in those rankings, I think I closed out that article, but Mike Matthews was still in the top 50. And then I think Braylon Staley was in the top 100 on 3, 2 wide receivers. And I mean, I think, as I said, we all knew that Heupel is going to get powerful offensive guys, and that has certainly held true. But the defense has just been really awesome. Now, to close out the little bit of football talk here, the Super Bowl obviously is set, and boy, howdy, how happy does the NFL have to be having old T Swifty in the Super Bowl? Oh God, give me a break, please. Yeah, I'm about done with that whole situation. But regardless of that, there are Tennessee players in the Super Bowl, and more specifically, Trey Smith, who's back again. Trey Smith's already won a Super Bowl, and he's one of the best offensive guards in the entire National Football League, and that's fun. But the guy that I so badly want to see win a Super Bowl is the OG dog. For regular listeners of this show, you know that I like to give out the dog award for guys that are really performing at a high level for Tennessee. And the OG, I mean, the true original dog for Tennessee is Juwan Jennings. And he had the play in that crazy comeback against the Lions that really sparked him. I mean, it was a huge third down conversion, crazy circus catch. And it was the exact type of play that he always made for Tennessee. It was just like so typical. Tennessee fans saw that and we were like, yeah, that's what Juwan does. That's his whole MO right there. I want to see him win a Super Bowl so bad. And it's not even just because I want to see Kansas City lose. Lord knows I do. I'm definitely a hater as far as that goes. But man, I want to see Juwan Jennings win a Super Bowl. I want it for that kid. He deserves the entire world because he's just been so awesome, and I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I'm not a Chiefs hater. I don't know. I'm okay with Mahomes because, and I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. One, I'm a Mets fan, and his dad pitched for the Mets. I saw him pitch back at Shea Stadium in the late '90s, and there's just the weird connection there that I enjoy, the kind of the baseball aspect of him. And two, there were times growing up there I did not feel like I appreciated like Tom Brady enough during his run. Like I was constantly rooting against him, and he got to the end of his career, and I really appreciated it. I was like, wow, this was pretty incredible. Yeah, he got some calls along the way. He had some things break his way, but even then, like, I mean, that's kind of superstars in general. Kobe Bryant, I feel like at times I was rooting against the Lakers to win because they were winning everything in the early 2000s. I did not really appreciate his greatness. And probably LeBron to an extent, though I'm still a little bit of a LeBron hater because I hate his demeanor. I think he's got too much of the look at me. I need this attention. I crave this attention. But I can respect the longevity of what he's done and the way he's done it, the way he's handled himself for the most part. So I'm trying to not do that with Patrick Mahomes to some extent because he is this generation's like dude, kind of. But with that said, I would prefer to, I think, to see the 49ers win this just because of Juwan Jennings. Trey Smith's on the other side. He's already got the Super Bowl ring from last season. Juwan, man, everything said going through all that at Tennessee, getting kicked off the team, having to come back on, get reinstated by Jeremy Pruitt, dislocating his wrist in that Georgia Tech game in 2017. Just so much adversity, and really that 2019 season, which was like the lone bright spot of the Pruitt era, if you want to call it that, even though none of those wins count anymore. That 8-win season does not happen without Juwan Jennings, because after that BYU game, that season was done. They were going nowhere fast, and we were, as fans, like in panic mode, because it's like, okay, this was like supposed to be the year that you at least get to a bowl game or win 8 or 9 games, and you've lost to Georgia State and BYU. And there were other games that season too, like the South Carolina game, I think, where Juwan kind of took over. And it's like, without Juwan, that team, I don't know. Like, they don't go to a bowl game for sure. Who knows how that season turns out? I mean, he is the epitome of a competitor. Every single play, he's given 100% effort. The ball doesn't come his way often, but when it does, he makes the play. I mean, he's third and Juwan in San Francisco. I mean, it's so cool, I think, that he's kind of earned this reputation out there that we all saw, when he's at Tennessee. I'll never forget there in that, I think it was the 2019, it was his last season at Tennessee. Somebody I know that coaches college baseball that's not a Tennessee guy at all, but was around him when that game was being played. And he said to me, he's like, that's the type of guy that doesn't go to a Pro Bowl. He never leads the league in anything. But one day you look up and he's been in the lead for 12 years and he's starting every game. And that's been so far the type of career he's had. And I think he's going to continue to have. So hopefully he gets a ring. Hopefully he gets a big free agent contract at some point, because he kind of had that weird 7th round deal, kind of year to year thing. Hasn't really got a chance to get paid yet. I mean, anybody should want this guy on their team. That's the type of role that not a lot of guys want to fill. But if you have that guy, run game's better, everything's better.
Absolutely. And just thinking back to kind of the trajectory that everything took so weirdly, a lot should be owed to Jeremy Pruitt in that single element. Not much should be attributed to Jeremy Pruitt, but the fact that he reinstated Juwan, gave him another chance after he had been, quote unquote, kicked off the team or whatever happened there, and made the Instagram lives and everything. Everybody that was there remembers. I mean, that really was such a huge turning point, because I think Juwan took it as a true learning moment. He really put his nose to the grindstone, and he just was dominant when, Tennessee was able to really he dragged them to those 8 wins. And I mean, it's so great to see this truly paying off for him. I want him to get, not just win the Super Bowl, I want him to get paid. I want all the good things for Juwan Jennings, because he's just, man, he's been awesome. Dude deserves it. He's a great, he also loves Tennessee, and he hates Vandy. If anybody remembers his, I think it was an Instagram tirade where he talked about how much he hates Vanderbilt. So great. But I just love him. I hope he wins. That's really it for football. Anything else, Zach, before we finish up with a little bit of baseball talk?
No, I mean, unless you want to get into some Taylor Swift talk there. I know you kind of rolled your eyes at that whole mention. I mean, definitely what the NFL wanted. No doubt about that.
No doubt about it. The ratings on this, the ratings are going to be bonkers on this one.
And the storyline with her, she has like a concert in Japan the day before, I think, or something. So it's like she's got to. I don't know. Yeah, somebody's done the math on it. I haven't paid that close attention, but it's like, she will be at the Super Bowl, and they were like breaking down hour by hour where she has to be. It's like, it's just 15 hours of time you have to allot for whatever the flight from Japan is. I mean, it's It's like being in Hawaii, kind of, right? I mean, it's about the same,
Ye-
similar distance, give or take.
Maybe 3 more hours
Yeah,
on a
so
plane. Hawaii's like 6 from the West Coast.
it's doable. Ironically, not this is kind of a quick aside, anecdotal here, but I'm reading Dave Grohl's memoir currently. I'm about finished with it, and I just read a part where he was on tour in Australia, and he had like a daddy-daughter dance with both of his daughters that he had to be at in Los Angeles, and played a show, jumped off stage, flew to California, was there for like 5 hours, just long enough to change, go to the dance, and then fly straight back to Australia for the show. I think it was like the next day after that. He had basically 1 day or a day and a half or something like that. It was like he had 36 hours, and 30 of those hours were in the air.
That's a brutal amount of flying. It's good.
So I don't think Taylor doesn't have to go back. It's a final show, so it's not that impressive to me.
God, that's funny. And the stupid part is that now that you've said that, I'm definitely going to go look up that after this. And
there's plenty of stuff out there on it.
Dang it, Zach. All right, let's finish just a little bit of baseball talk right after I tell you about Zen Sports. We've been telling you about Zen Sports all season long, the new sports betting app exclusively in Tennessee. And now we have some more big news. When you sign up for a Zen Sports account, you'll receive up to $1,000 no danger first wager. When you place your first bet in Zen Sports, you can be reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to $1,000 maximum if that bet loses. But there's even more good news. Zen Sports is rolling out its brand new VIP rewards program. The new VIP rewards program will allow top-tier customers to earn more bonuses, comps, and perks. And the VIP program is by invite only. So if you feel your Zen Sports play qualifies for VIP consideration, check out the program at zensports.com/VIP. No other sportsbook will offer you a premier sports betting experience with 24/7 top-tier customer support and faster withdrawals like Zen Sports. So what are you waiting for? Get going and download their app at zensports.com today. Zen Sports. Betting just got better. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. You must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. Zen Sports. Go download it. Get your bets in. All right, let's finish with this. I only have 15% battery life left on my old computer here, so we might be a little time crunch here, Zach. But Zane Denton is a baseball player for Tennessee. He had a really nice year last year. Famously, he hit the go-ahead home run against Clemson in the NCAA tournament last year, in a weekend that ultimately took Tennessee to the College World Series. And I mean, he was just a really fun player who transferred to Tennessee, I believe, from Alabama, right?
Yeah.
But he's also, I want to say, from Nashville. So he's a Tennessee native, went to Alabama, transferred back to Tennessee, and he's returning to Tennessee. It was announced, and that the expected thing was that he was going to play. Then this news starts coming out, and Tony Vitello starts getting asked about it at his press conference. That Zane Denton might not play. That kind of the status is up in the air. Now, the theory that I have heard about this situation is that Zane was expecting to get drafted in this last MLB draft, and he went completely undrafted. And I think not only was he, but also the coaching staff for Tennessee was kind of shocked by that too. And then he, at that point, he wants to come back, get his draft stock back up. But the theory is this is not confirmed, but this is just the rationalization that I've heard, is that Tennessee kind of transfer portaled over the top of him. And so he didn't exactly have a spot. And then it was too late, or rules constricting that he couldn't transfer again. I don't know the exact details there, but I think it was a situation where it would have made the most sense for him to transfer again. And whether he just didn't want to or he couldn't, he hasn't transferred. And now it's this weird limbo. And I don't know. Again, all of that unconfirmed, all of that kind of speculation, although you can, those details in terms of Tennessee, getting transfer portal guys are real. It's just odd. And it's kind of,
kind of a shame because he's a semi-local guy and he was so fun last year. You want to see him play, but it kind of is what it is. I don't know what you think about that, Zach.
Yeah, but baseball is such a weird thing from other sports. I was kind of surprised that he didn't get drafted, but I wasn't like totally shocked by it because he was already a graduate guy. And if you know much about the MLB draft, you don't see many, unless somebody just comes out of nowhere. You don't see a lot of college seniors get drafted in the first few rounds. I mean, they're kind of lower slot guys that go later. It's mostly juniors and high school guys. So that part wasn't totally sure. I thought somebody would take a chance on him, just with the postseason he had and some of the clutch hits he had. And I think you get into a situation where, they kind of recruited over him. You got Billy Amick coming in to play third base. Yep. He's a preseason All-American. He's one of 3 preseason All-Americans that you have, along with Christian Moore, I believe, and Drew Beam. So he's a guy that's going to be a pretty big part of this lineup. It's kind of like when they added Maui Ahuna last season. Hopefully Amick comes on a little sooner. But so there's, I don't think it's a situation where, Denton's not going to, even if he comes back, I think he was away from the team in the fall as well. So even if he had come back, I don't know that he was going to, he wasn't going to win that job probably over Amick. Amick's a potential, earlier round draft pick type of guy. So I think it's as simple. I think everybody kind of wants this dramatic story, but I think it's as simple as like you're at a crossroads if you're Zane Denton of what do I do? The baseball culture, especially now, and he's kind of one of the guys that really was into youth baseball probably as it's kind of changed and transitioned into the way it is now. If you have kids, I have a kid that plays youth baseball. It's a crazy kind of like a big business money grab type deal. Kids play all the time, and like a handful of them make it out of that to play in high school and to play in college. And it's been Zane Denton's whole life up until this point. It's been his whole purpose. You get to a point where you're not drafted. You don't really have a place to go on this team. If you do come back, you don't really know what your role is going to be. Do you want to give up what you've been doing since you were probably 6, 7 years old? I mean, kind of like that movie in Moneyball, or the line in Moneyball, everybody's told at some point they can't play anymore. For some people, it's 18. For some people, it's 35. I mean, for him, it might be right now. And that's kind of a huge life thing for him. I think if it's easy on the outside to look at it and be like, what just come back or whatever. So I think that's probably a lot of what's going on there. That could be a tough thing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I think Tennessee's going to be, with Billy Amick there, not to downplay Zane Denton. He was, a lot of memorable moments last season, and maybe he still comes back in some sort of role. I don't know, but I think the outlook for Tennessee is just as bright, with or without him on the roster. I think with Billy Amick there, you've got a guy with a lot of potential that can be a key player for you this season.
Absolutely. And last I saw, I mean, this isn't really a season preview because we're still 3-ish weeks out from the season. But Tennessee is, I mean, bona fide top 10 team. I don't know that I've seen a preseason poll. Tennessee's not in the top 10. And, the SEC, as always, packs the top 10. I want to say that last one I looked at, it was literally like 6 of the top 10 teams in America are SEC teams. It's absurd. But Tennessee's right up there. Yet again, Tony Vitello has put together a really good squad that's hopefully going to be a College World Series contender. And that is, I think you're right. That's with or without Zane Denton. I mean, he's not the 1A big, like the season swings on whether he plays for Tennessee or not. And yeah, that's a great point about, kind of the crisis of maybe being told that you can't play baseball, that it's not your future like that. Potentially that's got to be brutal. And hopefully a resolution is had there. I don't know what it will be or what's happening. Vitello has really just skirted around it in all of his interviews.
Handled it pretty well. I mean, he hasn't just totally avoided the question. And Tony Vitello, as we all know, is a pretty candid guy as it is. You never know what he's going to say or what he's going to do, and that's why we love him. And he's the perfect coach, the absolute perfect coach for Tennessee and for this fan base. But I feel like he's handled it pretty well, while also kind of respecting whatever Zane Denton has going on, away from the field.
Yeah, it's just tough. It's a weird situation. It's odd, and at the same time, it just kind of is what it is. Like I said, hopefully they find some kind of resolution there, because I'd love to see him continue to play for Tennessee. He was a really fun player last year and had really exciting moments for Tennessee, and hopefully it resolves itself. We shall see when the season starts, like February, whatever. It starts really starts in the cold for the people who watch baseball. You know that. So, all right. I think that's a show. Anything else for the folks at home, Zach?
No, that should about cover it. I'm sure we'll get into a baseball preview soon, like you said, because I think there's some really interesting things about this team, especially when it comes to the pitching and kind of how that shakes out. That's really going to be huge. I think there might be a Chase Burns replacement on the roster too. So there's some potential there.
Who's winning the Super Bowl? Call it.
I think the 49ers can get it done. I know that you were kind of skeptical on this, but I've watched a lot of the Chiefs this year, and their offense just is not. It's just not that great. At all. I mean, it's even if Mahomes is a superstar, he can only do so much. Kelsey's played better, but those wide receivers are so inconsistent.
Cool.
I don't think Matt Nagy's a great offensive coordinator. I know Andy Reid's probably calling the plays, but it's not the same. They don't really have a go-to receiver. You can kind of cover Kelsey with. I mean, I think the Ravens were using Kyle Hamilton, and he struggled a bit, obviously, with Kelsey, but some of those were kind of improvised plays. But even then, they only scored 17 points. I think McCaffrey can really give them some problems in the run game.
I hope so. I will absolutely be rooting for the 49ers and specifically Juwan Jennings, of course. But I think the Chiefs are probably going to win. I hate it. I mean, the 49ers are favorites, I believe. The line opened as close favorites for them. But it's Mahomes. I don't know. He is turning into that, like, don't bet against Brady. Like, he's just becoming that guy. As much as makes me ill, it is what it is there. But all right. Go Juwan Jennings. Please get that man a Super Bowl. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, listening, wherever you took in this podcast. We really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody for commenting and hanging out with us as they do every week. Seriously, it means the world. Couldn't do it without you. And I know I say that a lot of weeks, but like, that is so true. We could not do it unless folks listen. So you are the lifeblood of this show, quite literally. We truly appreciate it. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan. That's been the Big Orange Podcast, and we will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.